I love you. Welcome back, Couch Potatoes, to another special episode. We're still doing some more historical films to honor Black History Month.
Right.
Those films that we will be talking about today are 12 Years a Slave, Malcolm X, and Hidden Figures. I've only actually seen... I saw 12 Years a Slave. But I've also seen Hidden Figures. I never actually seen Malcolm X, which is a shocker because I fucking love epics. So
I think it's a good epic.
But first we're going to talk about 12 Years a Slave. Oh, we didn't even introduce ourselves.
No,
I am the Green Traveler. I'm so off the game right now.
I am the Faceless Leon, and this is a podcast about movies and TV. And we're doing a little something different this month because we just feel like we have a voice now. It's a small voice, and maybe we could use it to help change people's opinions if they are out there needing to be changed. I don't know. Here we are trying to do what we can. So,
yeah,
12 Years a Slave,
directed by Steve Mcqueen.
Yeah, Steve Mcqueen.
But not the action hero of the 60s.
That is always confusing me. Yeah, I don't know much about this Steve Mcqueen, but whenever I hear it, I think motorcycles. But anyhow, Solomon Northrop. He was a free man, a musician who was drugged and kidnapped and then sold into slavery.
And drugged and kidnapped in Washington, D.C.
Which, Washington, D.C. is basically in Maryland. It's technically not in any state, but it's basically in Maryland, which I believe had slavery at the time.
It did. It's just sad that he was a free man in New York, living a prosperous life, and he goes there to perform a circus or something. That was what I think the con men were saying.
I think that's what they enticed him with in the film. I've never read the book, which watching this again, I think I might. I feel like they were pretty loyal to the book in the movie, though. And he gets sold around, which, just all of the scenes where the industry is taking place is just heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
This a very intense film.
Yeah, it's hard to watch at times.
Yes.
Just emotionally, like it starts with a young woman. Benedict Cumberbatch is the first to purchase Solomon under what's the name? He Platt. I think it's Eli Platt or something like that. Forced
into taking the name Platt. I don't know. I don't remember even hearing a second name.
Yeah, it might have just been Platt. But. He's forced into that name, and Benedict is the first to offer to buy him, and he also makes an offer for a woman who is there with her kids, but Benedict can't afford the kids, so that's the first scene in the slave trade that you witness as a mom get taken from her kids, and it's heart-wrenching. It's hard to watch.
There's just a lot of that in this film, so it is hard to watch. There's definitely scenes that are harder than that. Even for example, there's several scenes where people are getting beaten, and it's visceral and graphic, and I think that it was important for this film to do that, to have it be as gruesome and as true as possible, so the viewer can get a perspective. I think I said that last time on how hard and how cruel this was for people to go through.
Yeah, and it's unflinching in how it portrays all of this. It just goes for it, and there's a scene near the end where we'll get to Lupita Nyong'o, but she comes into the story about halfway through, and there's a whipping scene where it's just so hard to watch. Her performance is so amazing throughout it. All the performances are amazing, but She won the Oscar, I believe, for Best Supporting Actress, and like
she deserved it.
Yeah, she delivered so much on this film that it's incredible. And
yeah, it is just hard to take in. But like I said last time, I think it's important for people to go through that. It's an eye opener, is what it is, and I think that's important. But let's talk more about this story. It is called 12 Years a Slave, so it goes on for 12 years. Then he is rescued. I don't think that's a spoiler to say.
Yeah,
like there's so much to experience in this movie. I honestly, I think maybe knowing that going in might make it a little easier to go into it. Knowing that
to sit through.
That there is a rescue at the end for him, I think might make it an easier pill to swallow.
But I'm going to make that pill harder to swallow by saying that rescue in and of itself is so bittersweet. Like,
oh, it is.
It's devastating because on the one hand, there is he as we've said, he is brought back to freedom, but he has to leave so many like people behind who are in like worse situations still than he was.
Right.
And so, the story focuses on one man and not on all of the people that he is surrounded by, who he goes through this horrible process with.
Right.
But, even though it just focuses on him, his story is amazing and important to be heard and seen because it's very powerful, moving. But it's hard to watch knowing that their stories don't go on the same path as his.
Yeah, they have to be stuck in this situation. They're still under the law, owned by another human being.
Who is Michael Fassbender?
Yes, which
I didn't realize that the first time I watched this when I was younger, when it first came out. When I was younger, 7 years ago.
Yeah. How much younger?
Back when I was a young buck, able to get around. My knees weren't popping when I bent down.
All of the white actors portraying slave owners and participants in this, they do a good job. They do a good job at making you feel like this is despicable and shouldn't go on. Especially, I believe Paul Giamatti. That was the most pissed I've ever been at Paul Giamatti.
Right. I like their choice of taking big name actors as well and making them the ones we hate, because for me it made it, I don't know, it made it more prevalent that anybody back in those days could have been these assholes, these bastards. Like,
that's true.
But that's what I really liked, was it took all these people who we do love, these actors that are big names, and it made them all bastards, and they all did a great job at making us hate them. And
yes.
There are some, though, that it tried to beautify their...
I was going to talk about particularly Benedict Cumberbatch for just a second. I don't want to focus on it too long, because I think that we should focus on the main characters, the heroes of the stories more. But Benedict, his name is Ford. He's a plantation owner, and he does not beat his slaves, at least not in the film. Well, he doesn't personally, but his overseers, they do. And in particular, one other character,
Paul Dano. Yeah.
Okay.
From There Will Be Blood.
Yes, that's the gentleman I'm talking about. He does not like Solomon, because Solomon is smart and is willing to use his intelligence to make Ford's plantation run smoothly. Solomon's doing this to survive, but this racist fuck doesn't like it just because he doesn't like that a black man is smarter than him. It turns into a point where Paul Dano, he goes to beat Solomon for no reason. And Solomon's just like, no, I'm not going to let this happen. Which gets Solomon into a lot of trouble. and
Yeah.
Ford goes and cuts him down, and he's like, "I'm trying to save your life right now." This is where I think they did this storyline right. I felt like up to this point they were trying to make Benedict Cumberbatch's character sympathetic, and I didn't quite like that. This moment, he's like, "I'm trying to save your life by selling you to a man who I know is cruel to his slaves."
Yeah.
That is the part where I think the turn, like, because you get to see that he doesn't see that the right thing is to free his slaves. That's
he's
if you really want to save these people's lives, then you shouldn't be owning them, because
yeah. I agree. I wasn't on board with Benedict's initial portrayal because it was very beautifying this character, and I wasn't liking that. There's another character who's beautified at the end, Brad Pitt, to an extent, but he did produce the film, so
yes,
I expected that.
but I mean, he also, it was a little bit white saviory, maybe.
Yeah, but he is Canadian.
I mean, he is a Canadian. He voices that he's against what the Michael Fassbender character does for a living, but he's still willing to take his money to build a building on his plantation. Yeah. But he does bring news of Solomon to his friends in New York, and that is what eventually saves Solomon.
Yeah.
So that might be a little bit white savory, but there was, I don't feel the same way, and the rest of the world might disagree with me, and maybe we'll see what the people think. I don't know if they'll agree with me, but I do not feel the same way when they elevate somebody who voices their opinion against slavery. I don't feel bad about that, because they should highlight people who are taking a step against it. But it was an impossible situation. It's also a true story.
Exactly. It's based off of a novel, and I'm sure that's how. Again, yeah. I feel like it was very fair. I haven't read it either, and I feel like it's very loyal, right, from what I've
and Solomon Northrop wrote the novel himself.
I guess that's really my only issues with the movie, and I don't really have many issues at all, because it's well delivered and well directed too. Like Steve McQueen did an amazing job.
Yeah, I believe so.
Performances from Chiwetel Ejiofor, I believe, who plays Solomon, and Lupita Nyong'o, who I don't remember her character. I think it was Patsy.
Patsy is right.
But their performances are incredible. Like,
yeah, they stand out the most for sure.
Yeah, but my only issues, as I said, I had two of them, was, some of the white. There's a lot of white characters, and they're all A-listers.
Yeah.
So they draw a lot of attention just by being A-listers, but I don't feel like, I feel like that was more, which I hate to say it too because I don't like it, but I feel like it was more to draw attention to it, to get more people in the seats.
Yeah, I guess, though, I do want people to see this film. I think the parts of it that are beneficial are very beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it is a worthwhile film, though I do share your reservations about this white A-list cast, excuse me, in the background.
Yeah, I just contradicted myself from earlier when I was saying that. It's like I liked putting them in there as, the assholes to make it more prevalent, and then I'm like, oh, actually, now that I think about it, I hate that they're all A-listers too. So
yeah,
I'm a conundrum.
Definitely might draw away from the other characters, but let's talk about Solomon and Patsy a little bit more. And there was also, man, I hate it because I can't remember her name, but the mother of that got separated from her children. So there was two stories really that happened on the two different plantations that Solomon was kind of set up with these women. That's kind of how it felt to me, anyways. That not necessarily that the director was trying to romantically set them up, but that they were trying to, like, it was they were definitely women that Solomon was sympathizing with.
Yeah, the first woman, his journey.
Yes, the first woman was always mourning her children, which, I mean, how couldn't you, really?
Yeah.
I'm not a mother, nor am I a father, but I couldn't imagine what that feels like. And she's constantly mourning, and Solomon, this is the part where I don't know how I felt about him at this moment, because he's basically kind of telling her to buck up, but he was really, he was like, you shouldn't despair so much, you're not going to survive that way. But she's like, her argument against him is, how can you be so emotionless being separated from your family? And so it's very interesting to see those two stories kind of tug and pull at each other. Yeah. And then because she's not doing enough work, I think they get rid of her. They sold her. I believe that's where the story went.
Yeah, I sympathize with Solomon because he was at a different stage in his grief. He had grieved alone in that cell for so long that he had moved on. As you said, he was looking to survive, to get out. He was stealing himself to prepare to get back to his kids. So I sympathize with him. Like, I was also mad that he yelled at her when she was crying, but I understood where his anger was coming from, because, like you were saying, he was trying to get her to steel up too, to be like, don't focus on the fact that they're gone, focus on finding them.
Yeah, and I think another character reason why Solomon might have reacted that way towards her is that her constant mourning was tugging at him to get to that level of mourning as well. And it was harder for him to steel himself with that around. I think that might be all in all, I think Solomon's journey emotionally and physically, that it all wraps up at the end as being a thoroughly thought out and sculpted person at the end of this story. So I don't think that I have any problems with the scene at all. In fact, I really thought that story could have used more focus, but like we said earlier, it's a true story. It's Solomon's account of what happened after he's separated from that plantation in general. He has no more control over who he is able to interact with. So that story does kind of just go away. Maybe I don't know how long his memoir was. Maybe there is more in the book with those characters. That would be interesting to me.
Yeah, I would. It is kind of like torn apart, the story, but I would say it doesn't go away. It just becomes the foundation for how he grows through what he encounters with Patsy's character, Patsy, Lupita Nyong'o. Because that's after their story, after his story with the mother ends, he goes on to he gets sold to Michael Fassbender, and that's where he meets Patsy.
Yeah, and Patsy is Michael Fassbender's character considers Patsy his prize, which is gross. She does go out in the and outpicks everyone in the field. And he also is physically attracted to her, Michael Fassbender's character, which leads to she just goes through more abuse than any other character on that plantation, because the wife also hates her because she draws the eye of her husband.
And the wife's played by Sarah Paulson, and she is just so cruel. Like
Yeah,
there's a scene, like many times I think there's a couple scenes where Fassbender wakes them all up to dance for his wife because like she can't sleep or something. And so
I don't know.
it's Solomon's just playing the fiddle and everybody has to dance, and she always takes her aggression out on Patsy because of her husband's attractions, and it's so hard to watch how she attacks Patsy. Yeah, it's just she has some of the most disturbing scenes for me.
When she threw that crystal whiskey bottle at her, my God. I didn't even see it coming. Like I really thought she was gonna pour herself a drink. Even this time
Yeah.
watching, this is the second time I watched it. I totally forgot about it, and she just
Mm.
swipes it off the mantle and then chucks it right at Lupita, and you're like, what? What the hell?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and
everyone in the room does that as well, but then they have to keep on dancing.
it's so hard to talk, like to watch. It's important to watch, but it's also it's hard to talk about as two white men. It's an experience that we will never understand or properly appreciate.
Right.
And this movie is I think it's essential viewing. I mean, despite the A-list cast.
I do think that Ejiofor and Lupita, I believe that they are both, partially thanks to this film, both becoming what I think the general public would consider A-list actors.
Oh yeah, well I mean like Us, the
Yeah,
second
us.
Jordan Peele film.
Yeah, and also I just honestly everything I've seen her in so far I loved. I don't
That's
remember what
true.
it's called. There's this Hulu movie. I think it's called Little Monsters. I'm not entirely sure if that's correct, but she plays a like kindergarten teacher, and then there's a zombie attack, and she has to protect it. She's awesome.
Nice.
It's amazing. I will be happy to see more from really all the cast members that we haven't really talked about too much. It does kind of seem like it is very much Solomon's view,
Mm-hmm.
and it does seem like though many of the black characters really aren't focused on. Besides Patsy, the mother character, which the three of them I feel like are really the ones who are focused on the most, and I do think that's kind of a little sad. But I
Yeah,
also
it's sad, but I think it reflects just the nature of being a slave because they're sold so often. You're torn apart from everybody so many times that like you don't really get the chance to know people. And
maybe
those were the few people that that he clung to ground his journey to help him keep from like going insane from revolting and not surviving. So it's like it's definitely sad. I do wish they were touched upon more, but like when his story ends with them, you don't see how their story ends.
oh man, especially Patsy's. Yeah, like the last thing you see of her is watching Solomon go away, and she faints.
Yeah, I was bawling during
Yeah,
that scene. I was just like, this is so bad, so
yeah.
sad.
I feel like there's one scene that I want to like, one scene in particular that I want to keep for just the audience members when they go to view it. But it is one of the most visceral scenes. And I think that scene in particular was my biggest takeaway from this film both times was just
Mm-hmm.
how much pain and cruelty that people were willing to do to other people
Yeah.
just astounds me. Disregard, I think, is the word I'm looking for just another human's life is
Mm-hmm.
just crazy. But I don't know. I think we did
We're
talk about this movie.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely give it 4 stars. And as I said, it's essential viewing. Like you have to go out and watch this.
Right.
Oh,
I
I
agree.
forgot to mention though. I did have my other issue. I said I had 2 issues. The second issue was with the music. It's scored by Hans Zimmer again, and there's so many pieces that sound like they were taken straight from his Inception soundtrack
Oh,
that
really?
I couldn't. Yeah, there's so many like the sad. It's just a sad like I don't know what the instrument is, but it's like
there's a lot of violin, which I
yeah, thank
liked
you.
because Solomon was a violinist.
Yeah, it is the violin pieces because they sound like they're the theme from Inception,
Oh,
which
really?
not when Solomon was playing, but only the background
Right,
violin score.
right. I just remember wow from Inception.
Yeah, I know. That's all that everybody remembers. I listened to the soundtrack so much though that when I was watching this, I'm like, did he not come up with his own score for this? He just I believe that's obviously I think he did come up with his own score. It's just very
Right,
very familiar that I'm just like,
right. Well, you write so many scores. I feel
I
like
know.
variation after a time is gonna get hard. But anyways, let's move on to Malcolm X. Oh wait, I didn't actually do my closing statement. It's definitely a full-faced movie. I would say that yeah, like you're saying, it's an essential viewing, but you got to be ready to watch this movie. You got to be prepared up front that it is daunting, I will say, to take in that that level of, I don't know. It is on some form of catharsis, and I think it's necessary for us as a society to recognize exactly what it is that was done to people under the law, and
Yeah.
why it's so wrong. So let's move on to Malcolm X.
The epic biographical drama directed by Spike Lee and starring Denzel Washington. I wanted to know up front. I haven't actually seen this movie before. I mentioned that, and part of the reason is because even though I love Denzel Washington, I think he's one of the greatest actors out there. He's one of those actors that is so popular for me that I can't watch a movie without seeing Denzel Washington.
Kind of like Nick Cage, though that's a different kind.
Well, I mean, it's different. It's a little different because it's like I see the characters of Nick Cage. They're all just crazy.
Yeah, they're just all fast.
Yeah, when Denzel, I see the character, but I just see Denzel. It's like Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck, no matter who he's playing, I just see Ben Affleck. That's a different story here. He disappeared into this role. Like, he became Malcolm X. It was so good.
I was going to say, man, I do not feel that way for this particular film. But
yeah, this is one of the few where I just, like, I watched it and I saw the character that Denzel was, that he wanted to be seen. I didn't see Denzel. And I was so happy. Because I love him. He's such a good actor that I was finally like, yes, I could enjoy a Denzel performance and not just see Denzel. And that's just me. That's, there's some actors who are just, I don't know, they're
too familiar.
Yeah, too familiar, I guess. I don't know. It's just, I only see them. I don't see what they're trying to put forth. But here it's different. Here's Malcolm X's life told from...
Yeah, I think he did a fabulous job.
Yeah, he really did. And it's told from the beginning of like his teenage years or just after to his assassination.
Right.
And...
It has hit him as a little baby, too.
Yeah. And I love these epic biopics. So I don't know why I never came out to, or like try to watch this. I mean, it was not really on TV either.
It came out, I think, the year I was born.
Yeah, it was just before I was born, 92. But the basic crux is he gets into crime early on. He's a thief, and he plays a numbers game with Archie, this big... Yeah. A numbers man, a gambler guy out of, what was it, in New York? Or was it Harlem?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was in Harlem, New York. But yeah, Delroy Lindo plays
yes.
West Indian Archie is what they called him.
And he never wrote things down. You don't question his memory. He had a rep to uphold, and Malcolm was a young and ambitious man. He'd taken under Archie's guidance really early on, and his confidence in himself, Malcolm's that is, kind of grew beyond his ego grew beyond his confidence. No, something along those lines.
Yeah, well, he got a big ego. He got too big for his pants.
Yeah, and he questioned Archie on he believed he had made a bet, and Archie was like, I don't remember you having those numbers, and just because Malcolm had questioned him, as Archie said, his rep was on the line. He had to act, and that meant death threats. That meant Malcolm's life was at stake. So he had to run with his girlfriend and his sidekick Shorty, who was played by Spike Lee, the director. Right. Which I love Spike Lee, and like that was watching him throughout this movie was.
Yeah, I really like Shorty. Shorty is a really fun character. I'm glad it was included. I don't know if it is a real life character or somebody that Spike Lee created so that he could be friends with Malcolm X, which that's cool in itself.
Yeah, right. Worth taking on the project all of it in and of itself for Spike. But they flee from Archie's jurisdiction, and I can't remember what gets him caught.
To avoid Archie, he left New York, went to Chicago, and then he and Shorty and their white girlfriends start robbing all of Chicago. And they get caught, and they were all first offenders. So the white women, they got off with a slap on the wrist. But but Shorty and Malcolm, they had to do, I think, 8 consecutive sentences of 10 years.
No, they were given 10. They had so many different violations that the judge was putting on them. He was like 8 to 10 years for this crime, 8 to 10 years for this crime, 8 to 10 years for this crime. And he's like, all those are to be served concurrently, which means at the same time. Yeah, and Shorty didn't know what that meant, so Shorty like passed out, and Malcolm was laughing. In prison, that's where he meets Baines, played by Albert Hall, who it teaches him about the Nation of Islam,
founded by Wallace Froude Muhammad, and Elijah Muhammad was his successor. Froude disappeared in 1934.
And Elijah Muhammad, played by Al Freeman Jr., he comes in later. But Baines basically teaches about the teachings of his Honorable Elijah.
Yeah.
And that's where Malcolm starts to come into his own, where he starts to research the teachings. He reads the Oxford Dictionary. He like translates the whole dictionary. It's where his view on life is just questioned in its entirety. Baines points out the definitions, how white people have shaped the English language, and he points out in the dictionary is like, here's how white is represented, and there's a bunch of good and holy and innocent, purity, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, purity, and then gross. Black is represented as dark, and it's vile, villainous, and it's just his whole life is questioned. That's when he starts to just become a voice for the Nation of Islam. When he gets out of prison, when he's I don't remember if he was released early or if he served all 8 years, but when he gets out, he becomes a voice for the Nation of Islam and a spokesperson, a very famous and powerful spokesperson. He gets a lot of televised time, and he's very vocal. He's a great speaker, so he's getting a lot of ears, and this movie goes into that beautifully. Like, at times a little too dramatically. Like, it definitely is more of a biopic, a dramatic biopic, but I preferred that. This is what I want for Harriet Tubman. I want a movie with this kind of scope.
That'd be
this
awesome.
Is the scope I want to give it.
I would have watched a 3.5-hour movie of that,
right?
For sure.
That is important to note. This movie is 3.5 hours long, or maybe just under 3.5. But I had to watch it in 3 different sittings because I have a very tight schedule,
right? And
I could not commit this whole movie to one night. It was just, even though I wanted to, there was, whenever I had to turn it off, I was like, fuck, I want to keep watching. but it is a long movie. You have to prepare yourself for that.
Yeah.
But that kind of becomes the story. Is once he becomes the spokesperson for the Nation of Islam, he meets his wife, played by Angela Bassett. They have kids. He grows a family, and he because of how vocal he is, his family comes under attack from society. People sending him hate mail, death threats over the phone, which is constantly ringing. And Betty X is
Betty Shabazz, but Shabazz is the name I think that Malcolm takes on after he leaves the Nation of Islam.
Yeah, she's just struggling with the amount of hatred that is focused on her and her family, and it's weighing on Malcolm too. He's out in the public eye so much, but at the same time, we get those glimpses once he's private, once he's in his alone area, when in his hotels and everything, how much it's getting to him. His paranoia over the threat on his life, the consequences of statements he's made that were just kind of off the cuff. Like he didn't. A lot of times it doesn't seem like he's planning to be controversial with what he's saying, controversial for the time. But it comes out, and there's a statement he makes with JFK's assassination that it made people so mad that the Nation of Islam was like, Elijah Muhammad said, I have to give you 90 days of silence. You can't talk to cameras. He's like, you can't be the spokesperson for 90 days. And it's like, I don't know if any of that was premeditated. I do believe it's what he intended to say and what he meant, but it always came across. Yeah, it just came across as just off the cuff. It kind of just like a spur of the moment statement that got more attention than he expected it to. Maybe.
Right. I do believe this movie does a good job of showing at the end of the movie that he did not necessarily believe the controversial things that he was saying at the end of his life, but when he was in the Nation of Islam, he wholeheartedly believed what he said. And like you said, he meant to say it, but like I think I can agree and say that maybe he said some things that he should not have said. And I think the fully developed Malcolm X at the end of the movie would agree with you that he probably said some things that he wishes he didn't.
This isn't as heart-wrenching to watch as 12 Years a Slave, but there are so many unflinching looks into Malcolm X's life.
Right.
They present it very well. They don't always make him out to be. I mentioned it when I can't remember which biopic we were talking about, but I mentioned how the biopics that take so much to focus on only the good and never focus on the negatives of the characters, those kind of bore me because they don't seem realistic, because we know everybody has negative moments in their life or negative sides to their personality. Presents all the facets of Malcolm X, and it's based off of his autobiography, which was related to Alex Haley. I think Alex Haley compiled it in written form. And I read that a long time ago, and this is like watching this movie, I want to pick back up and read it again, because there is such a unique and interesting life here, and I feel like he gets overshadowed by so many other popular names of the time.
He had a lot of twists and turns in his life. I mean, even in this movie alone, like the first hour plays like a gangster movie. I mean, because that was his life. He was kind of, I would say, a little crazy. He at the very least was not afraid to die, which is a line that he even says in the movie. Which you got to be a little bit crazy to feel that way, I think.
It's true.
But I think that lack of a fear to die does really play into the end of the movie when he gets assassinated. Like Denzel, I haven't seen footage of it, or if there is footage of it, I don't know. But when Denzel Washington is facing down those gunmen, he puts on a little tiny touch of a smile. Like, he knew something bad was going to happen. He did it because he believed that it was a time of martyrs, and he was willing to do that for the cause of equality. Mm-hmm. And at the end, I don't think I let you get to the point where I think I just kept on inferring that eventually he does leave the Nation of Islam because he has disagreements with Elijah Muhammad, because Elijah Muhammad's been abusing his power to sleep with women. Yeah. At least that is what is inferred. I mean, it was in the newspapers and stuff, but, they're also, the FBI in this era were doing a lot of things to fuck with people's lives. So it could have been that too. I don't know. They don't really show that angle, but it could have been. I don't know.
What else is there to talk about with this film? It's another one that I think is, I don't know if it's a central viewing, but I would say I highly recommend it.
I do highly recommend this. If you're interested in who Malcolm X was, I would say you definitely should watch it. I mean, it's kind of a one-stop shop for that. I mean, you get his whole lifespan in there. I think if you want to learn more about like what he stood for, that's kind of hard to pin down because his opinions changed, and I think that's kind of important to talk about this film. Is when he was a part of the Nation of Islam, and the Nation of Islam as a whole, they view white people as the devil, and I think I understand that view. I'm sure I don't, but I think I understand. Like, if you had been oppressed and your ancestors had been oppressed by a group of people, I'm sure it'd be pretty easy to be like, yeah, they're the devil. And I think that anybody would really kind of agree with you, unless they're part of that group of people, which I am. But I think that we did some heinous things back in the day, our ancestors. So I think that's a fair view. Anyhow, once he separates himself from the Nation of Islam, he goes on a pilgrimage, and when he's there in Mecca, he meets several white, blonde hair, blue-eyed Muslims. So if Allah can accept everyone as his children, then that's what he then believes that needs to happen in America, is that everybody has to work together to be.
Yeah, and what helped that view was, like, being at Mecca, there was so much tolerance there. Right. Everybody was, like, nobody viewed him as a black man. They viewed him as a Muslim, as a brother. And he felt that acceptance, and I like that. It's just, I don't know, it's a great story watching him develop from what he was at the beginning, this youth, snapping and dancing in the sidewalk. I love that scene where they're in their I don't remember the suits.
I think they're called zoot suits.
Was it a zoot suit? Yeah. Okay. I knew that. I know that term. I actually never knew what a zoot suit was, but yeah, that scene is, he goes from that to this bearded minister. Right. And it's it's an incredibly interesting journey to watch.
Right. Yeah, it's a very good journey. Like, I really liked the chapel scene where he was trying to make the chaplain realize that Jesus had color. Where he quotes scripture, even where it says, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but he says, when I say scripture, there's several scriptures. He quotes the Bible and saying that Jesus had woolly hair and skin the color of bronze. Yeah. That's not a white person, like all the portraits say.
Yeah, that is a fun scene, because I feel like that's one of those scenes that ends just a little too early, because they don't really show the chaplain's response. He's just kind of dumbfounded. He's just like, oh.
He says, that is interesting. That's what he says. Yeah, and if he's convinced, we will never know. But this going out to all Americans listening now, and I guess all white believers in Christ, he was not white. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry, he wasn't white.
Sorry, everybody. But it's just how it is. It's the fact.
Yeah.
And in scripture and in just reality from what we've from the people of that region that we know.
Yeah, even with like what we were taught, like I went to a pretty progressive church, but still all of our paintings of Jesus were pretty much white people, and all like the Sunday school videos and shit like that.
Thanks, Italian popes.
Yeah. Anyways, that's all I'm going to say about that. Because we're talking about Malcolm X. Do you got anything else you want to talk about this movie? I mean, there's so many good things, really. And really, the acting is just really
superb,
elevated, too. And, like, the epic scope really just makes it feel like 3 different movies. And I love that about this.
And I mean, I think that's my closing statement is the epic. I want to see more, as I said with Harriet Tubman, I want to see her presented in an epic like this. I want people with this kind of character, this kind of magnificence behind them.
Right.
I think an epic is deserving of their biopic, and Spike Lee killed it. This is an amazing movie. Again, it's not as heart-wrenching as 12 Years a Slave, but it is as important, I would say, in regards to Malcolm X. And I give it 4 stars. It's highly recommended. And damn it, I feel like there was something I was gonna say, but now it keeps escaping me. That's what I gotta say. Go see that, and also go see Spike Lee's other movie, Da 5 Bloods. It's on Netflix. Came out last year.
I have yet to see that.
I highly recommend that. I really enjoyed that one.
Well, maybe we'll do that sometime. Yeah, I gotta say, I actually would put this movie pretty high up on my best 100 list or something like that. I really enjoyed this movie. This is the second time I watched it this year. I watched it.
Wait, 2021?
Huh? Oh, I guess it's not the second time I watched it in 2021. You're right. God damn, it's February 7th when we're recording this. It's cold as hell.
Yeah,
I need to get familiar with the fact that it's 2021. I got to get on the ball. So
you don't write the date as much.
I don't. No, I am living at home.
I hope you're living at home.
Yeah. No, she hasn't yet. Working at home is what I meant to say. Anyways, I've watched this twice within a year, not the same year, within a year's time, and I would watch it a third time. There's just so much to this movie. It's really good. So go see it. Full Face movie.
Denzel Washington lost the Best Picture to Al Pacino for some movie I've never seen or heard of. So, the fuck even.
The fuck. So you mean Spike Lee for the best movie or for Best Actor? For
Best Actor.
Denzel,
sorry.
Best Actor.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was Al Pacino in '92 that could have been better than this?
I don't know. I've never even heard of it. I saw it and I was like, I did not win.
Whatever.
Snub. It's just like the Oscars, man. Their history is gross.
Yeah. I think maybe we should move on then. I do wish that we could talk more about the Malcolm X movie because I really did enjoy it. But we should move on to Hidden Figures.
Indeed. Saw this opening day when it came out.
Hey, we did.
Back in 2016.
We did do that.
Oh, good old days. When we would just go to movie theaters and watch movies when they came out.
Not no more. Maybe again. Sometime.
Maybe soon. We're closing in on a full year for me not being at the theaters. I think by the end of February it'll be a whole year where I haven't gone to a movie theater.
But what about Tenet?
Depressing that is for me. Well, that was at a drive-in. It feels different.
And we did go see Jaws and Jurassic Park.
Also at the drive-in. It feels different though.
Okay. All right, I'll give it to you. Hidden Figures. I wanted to pick this movie also because I like our space history as well. I just think it's entirely interesting, and I think that this film is, it fits into our agenda for what we're trying to do here, and I think it's kind of interesting that we picked out. We did not do this on purpose, but we picked out a movie in the slave era, the civil rights era, and then a movie that depicted people in the workplace. And this particular movie is about three, I'll call them heroes, who were...
I mean, they are.
Yeah, they're heroes. They helped us put our nation, that is the U.S., put people into space. This being Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson. They are the highlighted heroes, and in the film, at least, they are best friends. They work at NASA, and they deal with the segregation they're in, and they do their job. They put a man into space to orbit Earth is the big focus mission of this movie, and Dorothy Vaughan ends up being lead supervisor for the IBM that they have, which is just a huge supercomputer. She's like one of the few people who knows how to do it, and she taught herself.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this movie, is like watching them teach themselves this stuff.
Right,
is
because nobody's gonna give them a chance otherwise.
Like, that's one of my favorite scenes is Dorothy is my favorite figure in this film too, mainly because I love Octavia Spencer. She's
pretty cool. Yeah.
Just a brilliant actor. I love her. And but she learns that this electronic computer is going to come in that's going to do equations faster than all of her ladies that work as computers for NASA.
Right.
So she goes to the library, she goes to the white section, which she gets yelled at for, and takes a book from out of there that teaches her how to operate this computer, and it is just like she starts reading it to her kids, because she's just like, well, I'm going to learn, my kids are going to learn, I'm going to set everybody up. And and she doesn't do it just for herself. Once the people realize, once the white technicians realize that she is much better and understands this machine better than them, they're like, all right, we're going to hire you. And she's like, not without all my women, you're not.
Yeah. This needs a team of people to run. That's how complicated. Not to say that computers are necessarily less complicated, they're just more compact and don't require as much maintenance and manual knobby doos anymore. But she needed a team, so she brought everybody, the same room that the other two main characters started into, just doing the mathematics, to now doing the computer science. And it's great. It's a great storyline.
It's incredible. I love her character just because she's just like, it's not just about me, it's about everybody.
Right.
She does have a moment where she's where you see the effect of watching Taraji P. Henson and Janelle Monáe's character, Katherine Johnson and Mary Jackson, thank you. Where she, those two have gone off. They've left her computer room where she was the supervisor of those ladies. They've moved up, as it were, and she's watching them succeed and continue on. And you do see that how that kind of weighs on her, where she's just like, I built these women up, and now they're moving on. But she doesn't let it weigh on her for a long time, because she immediately just reverts back to, no, I'm just going to help everybody out. I've helped them take their first steps. Now I'm going to help all these ladies take their steps with me.
Right.
And God, I just love her story. It's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. Opening up in the movie, they're having car trouble on the way to Langley, and she, out of the three of them, knows how to work on cars, which, like, I mean, any one of them, any person really can learn that skill, I would say, to an extent. Not everybody can be a talented mechanic, but
I don't know shit about cars.
It is not rocket science, which they do in this movie.
You said do again.
I did say do again. I'm sorry.
I mean, that's just her personality. She's a single mom of. Well, I guess she's not single. Sorry, they do show her husband.
Yeah, she's.
That, I mean, that's That's another thing I like about this movie, just to take a little sidestep, is they introduce all of their romantic interests, but they don't focus on the romantic interests. It's about their integrity at their jobs. You know, it's about just their integrity as people, really. That's just a facet of their character development that doesn't steal away from the story that this movie's focusing on. I really like that.
I will say that they do go into her relationship with Colonel Jim Johnson a little bit.
Oh, Catherine's, yeah.
But that's it, yeah. The other two are in, you know, established relationships where she's a widow. So and they try to set her up with Jim Johnson, who is a good man. When they first introduce him, he puts his foot way up his mouth, like saying, "You'd think that would be a bit too rigorous for a woman," but talking about like the mathematics they're in charge of, and then she just spouts out like this long sentence of things that she does for NASA that he just has no idea what she's talking about.
Right. Yeah, she puts him in his place real fast.
Yeah, real fast.
He's played by Mahershala Ali.
Yeah.
Who, he's another actor that I just love.
Yeah, he's definitely on the rise, I feel like.
Yeah.
He's got
and I'm enjoying that rise.
Yeah.
But with Dorothy, though, is you get the idea that she taught herself how to work with cars because she might have had one break down on her when she was getting somewhere, and was like, well, this is my problem. I'm going to fix this right now. Nobody
is going to help me get through this. And the longer I'm on the road, the worse off it could be. Which that brings me to a police officer comes up and at first seems like he's going to harass them until Mary Jackson explains that they work for NASA and that they're late for work. And then there's this great scene where he's like, "Let me escort you." And she is just bumper to bumper with him. And I don't know if this is like a real life fact. Probably not. Probably just for this movie. But she was like bumper to bumper with him, and she says, "I'm chasing the police right now." I thought that was, maybe a little dark, but it was funny.
Yeah, I do feel that is one of the things with this movie is it does try to appeal to the white audience quite heavily. There's, the Kevin Costner's character is a white savior without a doubt.
Al Harrison is the character's name, who is not a real life person. I found out he's a composite of 3 different directors who were there during Katherine Johnson's time, which she was there for a long time. So
yeah, and again, I don't, we've mentioned this every time we talk about a period piece. I'm not a historian. I don't know accuracy of films that too well, but I did read that some of the segregation that is presented in this film wasn't as bad at NASA as it is presented. Like Katherine Johnson, I guess, has said that she would from the start. There's a long theme through this film of her running across the compound to use her bathroom because there was no bathroom for her or for black people at the West End.
The west side of campus was where the computers were.
So the East End had no bathroom for black people,
right?
And I guess from what I read, Katherine Johnson said that she just used the white the bathroom for everybody from the get go.
What I read right before we started was that she said there definitely was some segregation. She knew it was there, but she never felt segregated. She was just able to go in and do her job, and she worked with other people.
Yeah, everybody was just there to get a person to the space.
Right.
So
they were there to do their
focused
mission.
on their jobs, and that is true. There definitely was segregation, and that is such a big part of the story that I guess wasn't real. It was very embellished.
Right.
But I liked it because it was a powerful scene when it finally comes to fruition where she confronts her supervisor, Al Harris, Kevin Costner, whatever his name is, where she just she confronts him and everybody else too about
making her use a different coffee cup, a different coffee pot that she has to make herself,
and censoring all of the data that they're giving to her.
making her job harder for no reason.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just like that's a great scene when she finally just unleashes all of that on them, and they all realize, yeah, we are bastards, and but that is, again, as I started saying at the very beginning, is that's one of the issues with this film is it tries to appeal to that white audience quite heavily at times, and for me, the first time I watched it when I was far more ignorant, I really enjoyed this film just wholeheartedly. I thought it was great, and I still do think it's great. But watching it a second time, I realized how many white savior moments there are
that they give Al. Yeah, a character that they made up, really.
Yeah, and it just kept weighing on me as the movie progressed. Or I'm just like, can we stop? Like,
yeah,
let's focus on these three women again. Like they do so well at focusing on them that those moments feel really out of place.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, there's that moment where she finally confronts everybody in the room, soaking wet because she ran across campus in the rain to use the bathroom. Which that was a really powerful scene. And then the next scene is Kevin Costner knocking down the sign that says colored women over the restroom that she'd been using. And he's like, there'll be no more colored restrooms, no more white restrooms, just regular old restrooms. And that scene definitely did feel had the taste of white savior on it. But like when I did first watch this film, I did feel like, yeah, good for him for sticking up for what he believed in. Because to a certain extent, that's what we have to do as a nation is stick up for each other.
Yeah.
But in film, in media, especially if you're going so far as to make some of it up, I think we have to see the black heroes succeed for themselves.
Another moment even is, the company starts downgrading certain areas once they get closer to the mission time.
Right. And
one of those downgrades is they basically just demote Katherine Johnson back to the computers with Dorothy. And
after she basically invented the math.
Yeah, after she did everything. After she's the one who put confidence in John Glenn, in the movie at least. I don't know the historical accuracy, but John Glenn, I don't remember who portrays him, but yeah, he does a great job. But he finds confidence in the mission when she performs a mathematical equation in front of them and like solves all of their answers while doing it. And it's a great and fun scene. And you have all these people in the room who are just like, holy shit, that's it was like an aha moment where they're like, that's the missing puzzle piece for everybody.
I do like how they focused on her genius in general throughout the film. I liked those small moments where she got to show off a little bit, even though she wasn't necessarily like trying to show off. She just knew how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Just because you mentioned him, Glenn Powell played John Glenn.
Gotcha. And that's another white savior moment, though, is when she gets demoted, the only reason she gets brought back is because John Glenn's like, I'm not, he's like, we're going to call a delay unless you have Katherine Johnson double check the math on everything and figure out what's the right point of entry.
He did call her that girl, though.
Yeah.
But yes, he was only going to be confident if she double checked the numbers.
And then when she runs the data down to NASA, to whatever you call it, NASA headquarters, when she runs the data down there, they close the door on her. They take the folder out of her hands, shut the door, and she just left there like, okay, I just did all the work and you're gonna leave me out of it again.
Yeah. And
then Kevin Costner opens the door for her and he's like, come on in, and it's just like, all right, guys.
Yeah.
But sorry to focus on that so much. I actually didn't want to focus on that as much as I did, but that is one of my negative issues with this film. To focus on the ladies more, to get back to them. I feel like we've talked a lot about Catherine, and we haven't talked enough about Catherine. I feel like we talked a lot about Dorothy.
Sure.
Not much about Mary.
Not much.
Mary Jackson's story is just as interesting because she's trying to become an engineer.
Right. Like not only the first black engineer, but the first, I think even the first female engineer for NASA. Like I don't believe that there was one before her. I could be misspeaking.
But when she enters there, you know, she finds more acceptance in the engineering department because it's run by a Jewish French guy, I believe.
He's Polish. Who had to flee his country during World War II.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's just a little more understanding of her situation. He's very encouraging of her going to, you know, to get into college because she's denied the engineer's position because she doesn't have the proper degree.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of white people have gotten in without the degrees that she has to get.
Right.
But that's their way of denying her, is be like, well, yeah.
They changed
the rules. Yeah, fuck Kirsten Dunst in
yeah,
this movie.
I really hated her in this story. I mean, she did her job, so whatever.
Yep.
But Carl Zelensky is the character you're talking about.
The Polish engineer guy, yes.
Yeah.
He's a fun character. Again, not too heavily focused on. Applause there that the focus remained on Mary's story. And she goes to a judge to talk, to get her plea to enter into the schools to get the proper degree, even though it's a segregated school.
Right.
You know, she goes there and she just straight up talks him into being like, yep, I'm going to let this woman go through because
I want to be the first person to have let this happen. Which, like, for him, for his perspective, he's like, yeah, I get to be the white savior in this moment. For her, she's like, I'm going to convince this judge. So I still
totally
feel like,
yeah,
I feel like her angle on that story was definitely not white savior because it was all her. It was all her being super charismatic and convincing him.
Yeah, using her. Yeah, using all of her wits and all of her guile to get her goal accomplished.
Right.
And I agree. It definitely felt more like her accomplishment, even though he is the one who gives her the pass.
Right.
She's the one who succeeded in convincing him.
Right.
And
I do wish that there was one more scene with the Zelensky guy, because it felt like there was only really 2 scenes with him and her, and their relationship was really interesting. And I never got that feeling that Zelensky wanted to be this white savior character for her. I think he was always under the impression that she was the right person for the job. So I like that relationship, and I kind of wish there was one more scene with the 2 of them working together, just because I liked that relationship. But it wasn't, the focus was not on that relationship. It was on the success of these 3 women. So I think that in Mary's story in particular, they did a pretty good job of making her the victor in the story. Mm-hmm. Whereas, unfortunately, Katherine Johnson's story had Al, which, you know, I don't think Kevin Costner did a bad job. He did a good job. It's just I don't think we need that storyline anymore. If we ever needed it, I don't think we did. I think it could have been skipped over. I think, though, to some extent, some white people needed that example to be like, hey, I can do more. But we, as our modern moviegoers, I think we're done with it. We're tired of it. We want to see the black heroes succeed on their own.
Yeah, we need to keep focusing on unsung heroes too, because one of the big takeaways back in 2016 when I watched this was, I was never taught about these 3 women.
Yeah,
I wasn't taught. Never. I mean, to be fair, I wasn't taught about any of the mathematicians behind the space race, but these are 3 women who had powerful stories. You know, I really appreciate seeing these stories brought to life. It brings more detail to something that I already loved.
Right.
That now I'm more encouraged to go in and explore further. You know, I want to learn more about everybody involved and not just about, you know, Neil Armstrong for walking on the moon for the first time, or, you know, JFK for his presidency and delivering us there. I want more focus on people like Katherine Johnson and Dorothy and Mary.
Me too. Just because you mentioned you want more stories like that, there's this, I don't remember what the docuseries is called, but on Netflix there's this docuseries on the Challenger. I recommend people to see that too. They do a really good job of focusing on each individual person that were a part of that crash. It was a very diverse crew, which was something that NASA was very proud of, and the astronaut program at that time was accepting civilians, training them for civilians they all had different minor specialties, and they were training them to be astronauts so that the program could be more inclusive. And then also they had this teacher who was trained to a lesser extent to do lessons in space. That's not what this story was about, but I do think it has a good focus on characters that our media don't necessarily focus on very much.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I don't know, are we ready for closing statements on Hidden Figures?
I think we talked about what we need to talk about for it. Why don't you go ahead? Yeah.
Again, I really think that I highly recommend this.
Yeah.
I don't think it is as good as the first two films we talked about.
I agree.
I give it 3.5 stars. It just has those few flaws that I've already mentioned, specifically with Kevin Costner's character.
Right.
But again, not to shit on Kevin Costner. He does a decent job. It's just his character took too much focus from Katherine Johnson's story.
Yeah.
And then I also feel like Katherine Johnson's story is, even though it's the main focus, I feel like both Dorothy and Mary also have powerful stories that lost itself a little bit in Catherine's story. And not that that's a bad thing, but it's, I feel like it would have been more interesting to see all three of them have equal attention to their stories. But great film, great acting, directing by Theodore Melfi is fairly solid. He wrote it with Alison Schroeder. It's all around. It's a fun movie.
Yeah.
Go out there, watch it. It's good. It's just one of those fun space race films.
I agree with all that. I think that there is a good half an hour that could have been added onto this film to focus on the three characters more. But also to the same extent, I don't watch this movie and feel like it's missing any plot points. You know what I mean? Like, it's just that I want more. So I think it's a well-constructed movie for sure, and I give it a full face. I wish that there was a little bit less white savior stuff, but I almost said maybe that's a product of the time, but really that wasn't that long ago, and I just don't think we need that anymore. In our stories. So that's what I have to say about it. Still a very watchable movie. Go see it. So
who wins
who wins
our Black History Month Part 2 threesome Part 2?
It's really hard. I think we both are in agreement that Hidden Figures isn't quite up to the mark with the other two, but I really like the Malcolm X film. I really enjoy that movie. I think, and I think 12 Years a Slave, I don't know, 12 Years a Slave might be a better movie. It's really hard for me to choose.
I'm going to be honest, this is the most torn I've been on selecting a victor.
Yeah. It's strange because they I feel like they hit the three parts that I look in for the winner. One being the importance of the film. I think they're both very important in what the message is that they're trying to portray. They are just both very well executed as films. And then lastly, I enjoyed them both immensely. 12 Years a Slave is kind of hard to watch because of the violence, but I don't think that's it definitely doesn't subtract to the importance of the film, because it is very important, as I said while we were discussing it, that we expose ourselves to stuff like that. But I think I am going to say, for that reason, because I don't want to watch it over and over again, I'm going to pick Malcolm X. Spike Lee's Malcolm X.
Nice. I will come to a compromise then, because I agree with everything you said. I think Malcolm X is the more entertaining film to be rewatched.
Right.
There's a lot to gather from it, and there's, both of them are equally powerful. And again, I definitely think 12 Years a Slave is required viewing.
Yes.
But again, I think 12 Years a Slave is the better movie in regards to impact. And so the compromise is I will choose 12 Years a Slave as the victor so that both of them win, technically.
There you go. Okay, there you go. There you have it. We definitely shouldn't be the end-all voice of the victor of these movies anyways, but for our show, that's the format, and we chose they both win.
There is no victor because, like, obviously I say all three films are recommended watching.
Definitely.
But for the silly structure of our show,
you guys get it. I hope.
I hope. We're sorry.
Honestly, I have to say, I'm happy that we did this. I don't think that we're going to stop focusing on Black artists. We're an entertainment opinion show. Everything in these episodes are our opinion. Should not be taken to heart as fact. And I just hope that somebody gets some use out of us making this our focus this month to open their eyes, to look at their neighbors and say, I love you.
Yeah, and I accept you for every facet of your being.
Yeah. That's what I gotta say.
I've been the Green Traveler.
And I am the Faceless Leon. Safe travels, and good night. Green and Faceless on the Couch is a proud production of Fiction Works 19. If you want to learn more information about us, check us out on Facebook. You can also check out the Facebook and Instagram accounts of Fiction Works 19. Don't forget to like, follow, comment, or subscribe wherever you catch the show. Thank you all very much for listening.